Hello and welcome to The Price of Football, the show that looks at the money behind the beautiful game with me, Kevin Day, and Liverpool University's Kieran Maguire. Kieran, happy New Year to you when it happens, because it's currently Wednesday the 20th of December, but I think we can project ourselves forward, Doctor Who style, and kind of imagine that it is the New Year and that we've had a lovely Christmas time and maybe got some points. We'll all be back to watching football again in the Premier League and the Championship, and probably getting more angry than we should do about how Palace and Brighton have played. You'll probably be upset because McAllister's already decided that he's going and he's not going to see out the rest of his contract or play for you again. But Happy New Year to all our listeners. We hope you had a lovely Christmas and a pleasant New Year's Eve, and it's a pleasure to be with you for the last of our seasonal specials. It's a questions show today, Kieran. We have questions. Have you got any questions, Kieran, before we start? Always occurs to me that I never ask you that question.
No, I'm question free. I've just about finished marking my exams. I hope so. I'll be settling into the new year.
So does this mean you've got exams to mark over Christmas?
Yes,
I mean, or you had exams. You've been marking exams over Christmas.
Yeah, 1,500.
What? 50? Whose exams are you? Are you just collecting random exams to mark? Are they all accountancy ones? Are you doing like train drivers and?
No, sadly, no. So all accounting exams. Yeah, that's what we do at university. Yeah, because people say, "Oh, you've got a great life at university. You don't teach all that often." I say, "Well, yeah, but we do other stuff as well."
No, I get that, Kieran. I get that you and I've got no truck for those people to say, "Well, teachers, they have 6 weeks off. GPs, they only work. They don't. They're never not working, basically." But I didn't realise, Kieran, that each year started with 1,500 new accountants. I didn't realise the account.
Well,
I didn't realise the accountancy world needed topping up that badly every year.
yeah, they're all good fun.
I hope you had. I mean, if it was me, because I drink a lot of wine and Baileys over Christmas, I'd just go, he's borderline, but it's Christmas, I'm going to pass him. Or she's clearly not cut out for accountancy, but I don't want to upset her New Year, so B, that'll do. Do you have to be really hard nosed about these sort of things?
Yeah, you've got to be objective. It is going to be independently checked, so you've got to maintain standards.
Yeah, I wasn't implying, Kieran, that other accountancy markers are having a lot of Baileys and doing that over Christmas, because I realise that everybody is as responsible as you are. Our first question today, Kieran, comes from Mads Norgard. I hope I've pronounced that correctly, Mads. Mads says, I have a question regarding Todd Boehly's takeover of Chelsea. In your opinion, what is his financial vision for the club? How is he going to try and recoup his and his consortium's rather heavy investment in Chelsea? It seems to me that his options are rather limited, but maybe there's a bigger picture I'm missing. I think his options, we've discussed this, Kieran, in terms of developing the ground or moving the club, his options are severely limited, aren't they?
Yes, I mean, initially his financial vision for Chelsea appeared to be giving as much of Chelsea's money as possible to Brighton Hove Albion. And
I thought I heard a disgruntled murmur in the background when I mentioned Chelsea.
So, as far as Chelsea are concerned, in a good year, they'll probably be generating around about £450 million. And we have seen some of Todd Boehly's associates say they believe that the sky's the limit. They believe that Chelsea can become a £1 billion a year revenue generating football club. And if they can find the keys to the magic box, then potentially that could be the case. And the reason for this is that football clubs, and you've mentioned the stadium, football clubs get money from three sources: ticket sales, TV deals, and commercial deals. Well, the TV deal is negotiated by the Premier League and by UEFA. So there's not a lot that Chelsea can do at present, although what they want to do is to take away those powers from the Premier League and UEFA and sell the TV rights themselves. But I think that's going to be quite quite a tough cook to crack, or tough cookie to crack. Then you've got commercial. Well, there's only so much money that front of shirt sponsors and sleeve sponsors are willing to pay, and we've recently seen Chelsea. Looks like they're losing their sleeve sponsor, which was a good deal, but we said a good deal was £20 million a year, as opposed to perhaps 10. And that's not gonna double your overall revenues. Then we come to match day, and the issue as far as Chelsea are concerned is that they've got a capacity of 41,000. Even if you increase it to 60 odd and you revamp it in a similar way to what we've seen Spurs. So if I was Todd Boehly, I'd knock down Stamford Bridge and start all over again for a bespoke stadium. But I would also be fully aware that Chelsea being where it is in London has some neighbours who are A, filthy rich, and B, arsey when it comes to noise pollution, light pollution, and so on, and therefore they might kick up a bit of a fuss. So how they're going to get to this $1 billion a year, I think, is going to be a real challenge. But that's certainly the aim of the group, and I think what they're trying to do here is some form of, and here we use the word engagement. Now, NFTs have flopped pretty spectacularly, but there's still a belief, especially amongst American owners. Can they do something in terms of getting that relationship that they have with fans? If you take a look at, if you go hashtag Chelsea on social media, if you're on Twitter or whatever, what you will see is that Chelsea certainly have a very diverse and a very global fan base, and a lot of those fans aren't paying a lot of money to Chelsea each year. So if Chelsea have got 100 million fans around the world, if they can get each of those fans to give them a tenner a year, then that's your £1 billion. But people say, where they get 100 million fans from? Well, according to Manchester United have 1,100 million fans. So, I don't think that I'm being unrealistic in terms of the appeal of Chelsea in particular geographical markets. So that's what they will be trying to do. Whether that will be through some form of streaming service, which could turn out to be very lucrative. If the 3 p.m. blackout goes, will the Premier League club say, 3 p.m. matches can now be broadcast by the club instead of the Premier League, and you start to crunch the numbers. But that is the aim of the owners. It's to double revenues. How they go about achieving that, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be a very rich person. But I still wouldn't sell my soul to Chelsea.
Well, you've sold your players and your manager to them, so you're halfway there, Kieran. I think you've answered my question, because you say the ambition is £1 billion a year. So you say in double. So at the moment, their revenue is £500 million a year, presumably. Is that right?
Just under. Yeah.
So that is that's a big ambition, Kieran, isn't it? Really?
Yes. And we've seen we've seen Chelsea be sold this year, or that was a forced sale. We are aware that Manchester United and Liverpool are open to offers, although I don't think Liverpool will be sold by FSG. I think they'll just give away a small fraction of the club. I think Manchester United, there's a greater chance of a full sale there. If somebody comes in to Stan Kroenke, if somebody comes in to ENIC and Daniel Levy and offers them big offers, I think those clubs could easily be sold as well. So there's certainly a lot of interest at the top end of football, but football clubs, in my view, are going for prices which shouldn't be justified on business fundamentals, and the whole thing could come crashing down unless we start to see some form of genuine increase in revenues. You can't put up the prices of TV subscriptions anymore. People are voting with their feet. And we had a question on a recent podcast in respect of the price of football shirts has gone a bit daft, and would it be better to cut prices to stop piracy sales? Well, you work out how much it costs you for your football subscriptions to BT and Sky, and the product is great, the price isn't, and we're not condoning it, Paul, but we're hearing of increasing numbers of people who are going down the dodgy stick route from a bloke they know in the pub or a guy that they know on a WhatsApp group and so on.
You confused me there slightly, Kieran, talking about a question on a couple of pods ago, because it was 48 minutes ago in real life. I got very confused there. On a purely business commercial note, Kieran, rather than a love of football emotional note, even people as wealthy as Todd Boehly and his consortium, if it's quite clear that the ambition to double annual revenue isn't going to happen anytime soon, do they walk away, or are they happy with any improvement, or are they happy with just getting something back financially?
Well, I mean, 60% of the Chelsea deal came from an American investment company called Clearlake Capital. Clearlake are answerable to their investors, and if that growth in revenue doesn't take place, I think there will be pressure to either get all of your money back or even a slice of your money back from the Chelsea deal. And certainly, if you look at the research that's done on company takeovers, the winners in most takeovers are normally the owners of the selling company, which here is, in theory, Roman Abramovich, but clearly, the government has ring-fenced that money. So it's ideally, if people get their fingers out, it's going to go to good causes to help humanitarian relief in Ukraine. Although, as a separate issue, there seems to be very, very slow progress there. It's the sellers company that benefit, and also the accountants, lawyers, and other professional service providers that come out of it very well indeed. The buying company normally is a loser, and that's not just in football. If you take a look at what's happened with Twitter since Elon Musk has bought it for, what was it, $44 billion, I think it's fair to say that Twitter's value, if he tried to sell it today, would be substantially less than that. So there's lots of winners and losers, and it's a high risk stakes game, and even very successful people get these things wrong. Rupert Murdoch bought MySpace, I think on one occasion, and sold it for I think he sold it for $1 in effect. After I don't know many people on MySpace these days.
I'm not even entirely sure what it is. All I'm thinking of is when back in the day when we were a bit younger, Kieran, if you said Rupert Murdoch had bought your space, I'd think, why is Rupert Murdoch buying your flat? But never mind. Our next question comes from Tom Metcalf. Happy New Year to you, Tom. Tom says, we now have the FA Cup semi-finals at Wembley, brackets, a terrible decision in my opinion, close brackets, so the FA can earn a few quid. If they went back to hosting the games at normal grounds, how much could a club expect to earn from hosting a game? And are there any requirements for grounds such as capacity, transport links, etc.? I suspect, Kieran, this is a purely hypothetical question because I don't think that genie is ever going back in the bottle, is it?
Sadly not. So, I understand exactly where Tom's coming from. The reason why the World Cup is so wonderful, in my view, irrespective of where it's being hosted, irrespective of the machinations of Gianni Infantino, is that it takes place every 4 years. And there is that genuine sense of achievement, that genuine sense of anticipation. And it's the same with the FA Cup. Going to an FA Cup final should be the apex, should be the Mount Rushmore of a football player's career. And I think you dilute that by having semi-finals there, as well as the fact that Wembley is a pain in the backside to get to and get away from. So in terms of hosting the games, I think the FA would have to have a de minimis level of capacity, likely to be 40,000, because otherwise, why prevent? Most clubs who get to the semi-final are going to want to bring as many fans as possible. So having a restricted capacity. But there's no reason why it couldn't take place elsewhere in London. We've got 60,000 capacity stadiums there. We've got Old Trafford at 75. We've got Anfield going to 61. I think Leeds is looking to increase in 50. I think Villa want to increase. So there's there is, I think, something magical, and I can still remember going to Highbury in 1983 for an FA Cup semi-final, and it was brilliant. But part of the reason it was brilliant because it was this neutral venue, and it wasn't Wembley. And I think that added to the occasion. And we were lucky to get to Wembley as well. But it's, I don't know. Perhaps we're being too romantic about the notion of a neutral semi-final and the location. But we saw last year quite often. You'd have two northern teams having to come down to London for that makes no sense. Whatever. In terms of what would the club expect to own from hosting a game, it would be pretty insignificant in the wider scheme of things, because it's likely to be a Premier League club which is generating income of 150 to 200 million pounds. The hosting fee, we're probably talking a couple of 100,000.
Yeah, our FA Cup semi-final 1990, 4-3 against Liverpool, I don't think it would have been anywhere near as potent or as exciting if that had been at Wembley. I think what you have to remember is that Wembley back in those days, Kieran, in our day, when there was a terrible shithole of a ground, it was an awful ground, and the new ground is so much better. But blander. It has to be said. It's not. It's we had a question a couple of pods ago, /45 minutes ago, from a Palace fan talking about the semi-final last year at Wembley, and you kind of, of course you care if you win or lose, but you care less so, I think, at Wembley. And also there's that terrible thing for a Wembley FA Cup, and I understand there will be a lot of our listeners listening to this pod going, well, thank yourselves, lucky that you get to semi-finals of FA Cups, etc. But you've got that issue as well that there are 3,000 empty seats until about halfway through the second half, when the corporate fans get off their arses and come back to watch the rest of the game. So, I, sadly, like we say, I think it's a hypothetical question because I can't see the FA ever going back to it. Jan Peters supports Dutch side NEC Nijmegen. And he says that we're now in our last year of partnership with Italian manufacturer Legia. Although the kits looked decent enough during the last couple of seasons, there have been many delays regarding the delivery of them to fans. Because of this, supporters are angry at the club, and the club itself loses a huge amount of shirt sale revenues. Are there any legal obligations that force manufacturers to deliver on time or get fined otherwise? Or is there a way of switching manufacturers during the season at such short notice?
Right, I won't go the full Terry Collier and say angry Dutchman, but
that's a reference that's going to need explaining, Kieran, to so many people. It's from a wonderfully underestimated sitcom called Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads, which examines class and social mobility in England in the 70s. And Terry Collier is a angry working class Newcastle man who basically has an adjective for every nationality outside the UK and some inside as well. It's worth YouTubing. It's a very funny piece of comedy material. I love that series, Whatever Happened to the Likely Lads, Kieran. I thought that was wonderful. I thought that was brilliant.
Absolutely amazing.
It was so poignant, the way that Bob's character grasped the bourgeoisification, if you like, for want of a better word, of Newcastle, and Terry just lamented the knocking down of every last pub and corner shop. It's a brilliant show. Anyway, back to Dutch side NEC Nijmegen.
Yes, right. With respect to this, I think clubs, the manufacturers, will be able to claim some form of force majeure in terms of supply chains, because there still is a knock-on effect in respect of COVID. There could be fines for late delivery. Again, you'd have to look at the small print of the contract. But in terms of switching manufacturers during the season, you've got next to zero chance. And the reason for this is that the kits are normally designed and approved 6 to 9 months before the start of the season.
Yeah.
So therefore, to be able to switch, Nike and Adidas all that they're going to say to you is, well, you can buy some. We'll sell you a spare Manchester United away shirt from last season because we got a load still in stock, but we can't give you anything dedicated because they in order to meet the expected delivery runs that they're already committed. They're in April and May they're already producing the Manchester United and the Chelsea and the Liverpool shirts for the following season a lot of the time, because you need to have those numbers created in advance to hit the launch date. When it occurs over the course of the summer, and you can't just produce 30, 50, 100,000 shirts overnight. So unfortunately, you're stuck with Legia, and the club might get some financial compensation, but also from the manufacturer's point of view, it's a nightmare as well, because if you talk to manufacturers, they don't sell shirts from the 30th of December onwards, in effect, because people have bought them for launch. They've bought them as Christmas presents. You might have bought one very quickly in the Christmas sales, and it's only the price of Football FC shirt, which is available, to acquire after Christmas.
Yes, it is, but this is New Year now, Kieran. We're confusing ourselves, so it's not anymore.
Right.
We're January the 2nd now, so as we speak it is, but when they listen it isn't. Let's move on. Let's move on to our next question, Kieran. I'm sure the Price of Football shirt will become available again, although they're being made to order, so we'll see. Our next question comes from Mark Midling, and I like the cut of Mark Midling's jib. Mark Midling has a very straightforward question. No adjectives.
Not on about, is he? He's not on about.
No subclauses. It's almost Hemingway-esque in its directness. Basically, Mark Midling says, how much did Port Vale and Mansfield make from the League Two playoff final last season?
185 grand each, Mark.
Thank you very much. Jude McCarthy has a question for you. And Kieran, consider this a little late Christmas present from me and producer Guy. a proper little accounting present that we left under the tree that you forgot to open in your excitement at getting your 1973 Brighton kit and a year's free quinoa on subscription. Jude McCarthy says, last season my club Aston Villa signed Philip Coutinho for 17 million and Boubacar Kamara on a free transfer, which got me thinking about how they would each affect FFP. Say we signed two players, both on 4-year contracts. Player A, £40 million fee, £5 million a year salary, and player B, free transfer, £15 million a year salary. Both deals would cost $60 million over the 4-year period, but is one better than the other in terms of financial fair play?
Right. In respect of financial fair play, what you would be looking at here is two football-related costs. The first of which is the player's salary. The second of which is the amortization on the compensation paid, which we refer to as a transfer fee. So in respect of player A and the £40 million fee, what would happen here is the £40 million would be amortized over 4 years, which would give us a figure of £10 million plus £5 million for the salary. So that gives us a total annual FFP cost of £15 million against player B, signed on a free transfer with just a £15 million salary. So the two things are absolutely equal. But I think what the issue that Jude raises here, which is something which I think many fans don't pick up on, is that what he has highlighted is something which the clubs look at very, very carefully indeed. They always say to themselves, what is the total annual cost and what is the total cost over the contract of signing a player? And they take into consideration, and this is why we are seeing players like Paul Pogba, winding down his contract. It's why Kylian Mbappe wound down his contract at PSG. He could have walked away for nothing and had a huge signing on fee from another club. As it was, he ended up getting a huge signing on fee to renew his contract from PSG, because PSG would have said to themselves, if we want to recruit a replacement for Kylian Mbappe, it's going to cost us £100 million transfer fee plus heaven knows how much in wages. So clubs are now very much looking at the total cost, but players and their representatives are aware of this as well. So I mentioned Pogba and Mbappe. We've got the situation at Manchester United that David De Gea could potentially walk away, I think, in June 23, unless they agree to match his current level of wages. And then they say to themselves, well, what's it going to cost us to replace him in terms of not just wages, but also a transfer fee and amortization?
Now, our penultimate question of our first pod of 2023 comes from Connor Sutherland. And Connor says, with the cost of advertising in the Champions League final, I was wondering what kind of impact the 15-minute delay at the start of the 2022 final had on income for the match, as they would presumably have had a planned schedule of adverts in the build-up and at half-time with set prices depending on the time. How would the extra ads that were shown in this 15-minute period impact this? Would there have ended up being more income as there was more time for adverts that reached more millions of people?
I think potentially, Connor, this would be the case. And this is also an issue when which we have seen comments about in respect of the 2022 World Cup, because we're recording this in 2023-ish. So we get back to the 2022
Kieran,
World Cup.
I can't stress this enough, Kieran. We're broadcasting this in 2023. We're recording it, remember, 2022.
Yes. One of the features of the World Cup was the amount of injury time, and I personally applaud that, because I can't stand time wasting. And my rule is that if a player is in the last 5 minutes, if they are shielding the ball towards the corner flag, you should just be allowed to go and kick them.
Yeah,
and I don't understand why that rule doesn't take place. It really gets on my wick. And to be fair, Kalina encouraged the referees to add on more time for time wasting, and that was actually quite good. But the broadcasters absolutely hated it, because broadcasters, they like football, but they don't like football, because if you take a look at a normal hour of commercial television, there's normally, 42 minutes of product, and there's 18 minutes of adverts.
An ITV hour is 48 minutes.
Is it 48?
Yeah, okay. It might be more, it might be less on Channel 5 and others, but certainly an ITV hour is roughly 48 minutes.
Right. So if all of a sudden it's bad enough having 45 minutes in which you can't show any adverts. If the referee extends that for 8 or 9 minutes, can you see from the broadcaster's point of view, it's squeezing the pips even more. So there will be flexibility built into this, because especially once you reach the knockout section of a competition, you've then got extra time as well, where what the broadcasters will have done, they will have given sort of what you might call shoulder prices, that in the build up to the match, these are the advertising rates. At half time, it goes up to X, between full time and when the pundits come on. So there will be a series of prices, and there will be arrangements made with individual commercial partners and marketing companies as to who is prepared to pay for those extra adverts at those potential high volume of eyeballs times.
Yeah, I'd like to point out, Kieran, it's only time wasting when other teams do it. When your team does it, it's game management. It's very interesting, because what you'll see on ITV is they will shunt the news backwards if they have to. If the game, the news will come up in, there's no question that they will go to the news at 10 o'clock if they're losing advertising time because of the referee adding 10, 12 minutes, which did calm down in the sort of second week of the World Cup and then went back up again. I'm not sure what the regulations are now. It used to be, certainly only to a few years ago, as I've been there when it's happening, that during a big game or an exciting live event, you would have advertisers trying to outbid the adverts that were already bought, if you like. They would be going to ITV. It's like an auction room, saying, "Look, this is there's 20 million people watching this game. We don't care what advert you've got lined up. We'll pay more money for it." And similarly, if there's a really dull game going on, you will have ITV trying to sell a little bit of extra advertising time because people don't want it. It's a really complicated, interesting process. It's not as simple as, right, you've got a 3-minute commercial break. These are the commercials that are going to be shown. It's often fluctuating right up until the commercial break actually happens. So again, if we knew somebody, I'm sure I must know somebody, Kieran, who still works in that. But it's one of those things that we all take for granted, but it's actually much more complicated than we really think it is. The only important thing that is a given is that whatever their commercial broadcasters have to show a certain amount of news every hour, but they will take the fine for not doing that rather than lose the adverts because the game's overrunning. Now, our final question for those of you who have been paying attention to Producer Guy's strategy over these special Christmas and New Year pods is about kits, even though, bizarrely, our kit isn't available, so there's no point leading in to that spiel that we've been doing. But it comes from Matthew Riley. And Matthew is a friend of the show and has written a wonderful book about kits called Kit and Caboodle, which we can highly recommend, all the profits of which are going, I believe, to Exeter City's women's team. And Matthew Riley has a question about kits. Matthew says, with the increasing ability of fans to design and produce concept kits and the huge popularity of retro shirts, do you see the market for standard club kits shrinking over time as manufacturers consider revisiting the sums front-loaded to clubs for often bland new designs?
The romantic in me says yes. The realist in me says no. And the reason why I say that, Matt, is that fans want to be the fans of Crystal Palace, Manchester United, Brighton Hove Albion, Rangers, Liverpool, Chelsea, whoever it's going to be. They want to show that they're fans of that club in 22-23 or 23-24. And there's also an element of bragging rights when it comes to wearing kits. I've sort of stopped buying kits now, but sometimes I succumb. Sort of. What you've done is sort of stop telling the Baroness you're buying kits, Kieran. That's what you've done. Yes, yeah. The Baroness gets very upset with my kit drawers. But there is always the sense amongst many fans is that they want to replicate what they're seeing on the pitch in terms of the kit. And I know that some clubs will actually say, especially if normally if it's an away match, for this match, we are wearing the second kit or the home kit or the third kit or whatever it's going to be, so that fans can feel that extra sense of togetherness with the club, and that they are fashion items. And also there's an element of the herd when it comes to football kits, that if you know that you're playing at home, you want to wear your regular home kit because the majority of people will be doing that. I do think we see more diversity in terms of kits than we have in previous years, but they still tend to be the real deal. In terms of retro shirts, the manufacturers themselves are now sort of dipping their toe, and the clubs are dipping their toes into retro shirts, which you can find in club megastores, because again, they tend to be either iconic kits or reflections of iconic seasons. And they tend to sell, if you talk to people at the club, they tend to sell in addition to the regular home shirts, rather than, they're not substitutes, they're complements, and this increases your overall volume of sales.
I have to say, Kit, I really enjoyed the World Cup. I didn't particularly want to at the start, but I really enjoyed the World Cup. But one of the things I found very interesting looking at fans, and if you looked at the Argentina fans and Morocco fans, France fans in particular, not so much the Morocco fans maybe, but certainly Portugal, Spain, even England, they're fans, and they were, apart from Argentina, they were there in fewer numbers than they would be at a European tournament. But very few of they all had national team shirts on for the most of them. But very few of them had the modern version. It's like, if you look at the Argentina fans, so many of them had 78 kits, 86 kits. England, you can go back through every World Cup and Euros. The same with France. You saw far more many France fans with the lighter blue kit than you did with the darker one. And I don't know whether that's a generational thing that you wear the kit of the time when you were growing up or whatever, but you saw very few sets of fans wearing the most up-to-date kit.
I agree with you entirely. I think there's two drivers of that. First of all, it was very expensive to get to this year's World Cup. So therefore, in terms of demographic, it was people who were perhaps a bit older, not necessarily mature, and therefore, if you're an England fan, you think of Italia '90, you think of the '66 kit and so on. You can absolutely understand it from the perspective of an Argentinian fan. The French kit, I love that French shirt. But you can understand why French fans might feel that it's not a classic French blue, and therefore they're wearing other ones. And we now have the capacity to buy sort of retro shirts, because I think there's a manufacturer called Score Draw here, and I went on its website, and you effectively every England kit for the last 30 or 40 years, potentially you could get hold of a not a snide version, because I think there's still some sort of official approval of them, but a replica of those years. And as you rightly said, we do. I remember what I was doing in '86. I remember what I was. We associate football matches with. I know where I was when Gary Lineker got that hat trick in Mexico and so on, and you liked to sort of revisit those former glories, sort of on a personal and on a country level, by buying the shirts from that particular era.
Which is why you imagine for about 3 decades to come, Moroccan football fans will only be wearing one particular shirt, because they were superb. They were the story of the World Cup, as far as I'm concerned. I've just had to go back to the top of this email, Kieran, to work out what date it is. It's it's Monday, January the 2nd, which means we'll be back on Thursday with the first of our normal pods for this year. In the meantime, thanks to everyone who's donated to the pod via our Patreon page. If you'd like to make a small monthly contribution, that's very kind of you. You can do so by going to patreon.com/priceoffootball. If you have a question you'd like answered on the show, email us at questions@priceoffootball.com. And before we see you again on the 5th of January, I will hand you over to Mr. Kieran Maguire for his customary farewell.
Well, Happy New Year to everybody. I hope you've had a peaceful and relaxing time, and I appreciate also that many of you have been working very hard. It's different sectors of the economy have different demands at this time of year. Thank you for everybody at Patreon that does support us. The other way that you can do that, if you want to show us some groovy vibes, is to go onto your podcast app, and if you can give us a review, give us what you think we're worth. Doesn't matter what you say. You could even say, and these are probably the two of the people who I'd least like to host the show. You could even say you'd rather have it hosted by Jeremy Clarkson and Rose West.
Yeah. You've already broken your New Year's resolution, Kieran, which I made you promise to not say groovy vibes again. Bye, everybody. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Bye.
The price of football. The price of football.